Hi, this is Mihir. I have Saurabh with me.
Hi, I'm Saurabh.
Saurabh, what's the name of the podcast?
So there are a couple of options that I have. I would call it the multidisciplinary podcast.
Karturiya pronounce multidisciplinary podcast.
And the other option is podcast for dummies. No, that's the bad name. Sorry, scratch that. So the deal is we don't really have a name of the podcast, and the idea is to gather some interesting people in front of the camera and try to learn from them. Right?
Yeah, and hopefully we don't go through the same issues that we did just now. Once the guest is here, that would be hilarious.
The setup issues.
The setup issues.
So if I could take a picture and show you the setup that we have right now, that would be really, really funny. Also, be able to talk to the camera, not to yourself in the in the screen. So look at the camera, right? And maybe next time we'll put an arrow here saying that talk here for the guests. Anyhow, so this is Mihir and this is me. And quick background. No, we don't do background.
We'll put it in the show notes. We have show notes now.
Yeah, we have show notes. Okay, so start. Mihir will start and I will support him in something.
So I've been thinking about this for a while, and I know as Saurabh, and we want to do something that allows us to put our voice out there, and also build a platform where other voices can kind of reach an audience that's interested in this kind of thing. We want to probably play more or less around startups, technology, business, that area. And we feel that there is still a lot of space in the ecosystem in India for programs like this, for programming like this, if you will.
So okay, I have a different perspective, and I like all things when I talk. I'll go a little philosophical. So whatever little I've learned, I keep telling this to the world. Whatever little I've learned, I've been able to learn because I had shoulders to stand with giants on.
Right.
In one line, shoulders of giants essentially means people who have been there before me and they did some body of work that I could read and sort of build on. So that example would be a guy like Karkare who sort of wrote the C language and then made me start learning programming with the C language and so on and so forth. So for me, this is an attempt to actually do two things. A is to give due credit to all the giants that I've sort of known of. So during this episode and the subsequent episodes, you will get to hear from me a lot of people who sort of taught me, who I've learned from. So that is A. And B is that now that we have a platform to sort of discuss this, I want to be able to be the giant that a lot of other people could use the shoulders of. So that is the other agenda. So Mihir's agenda is obviously let's say agenda A. Mine is a little philosophical. We'll call it B or something. So that's where I come from.
Right. Can we call the podcast Agenda Ucha Rahe?
No, thank you so much. So Mihir will have these puns which apart from Mihir nobody else understands. So that's Mihir for you guys. Anyhow, so that's my agenda.
So actually, that's a great topic to start with. We were really struggling to figure out, what do we start with? Can we start with giving props to some of the giants whose shoulders we are
Props.
Props. I'm the cool guy, right?
Cool
props. As in, okay, talk about some of the. We don't edit it.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
Okay. Some of the nobody edits. Some of the giants whose shoulders we are standing on. Why don't we?
Yeah, that's a good idea. So I can talk about myself. So there are two sets of people that I sort of took lessons from. So one is where I had say physical access to, so I could reach out to them and say hello and ask them questions. The others were the ones where I had to sort of look at things that they've said, on other mediums, let's say their blogs or websites or videos or books and so on and so forth. So the very first guy that I'll probably want to mention is this guy called Sanjay Bakshi. He teaches a course called BFBV, Behavioral Finance and Business Valuations, at my B school, MDI. And he says, and I quote, that BFBV is an excuse to teach worldly wisdom by using mental models and insights from psychology, philosophy, sociology, marketing, technology. So think of a discipline that he will bring it for us to sort of learn from. So he was the first guy that actually told me that you could look at a problem from 20 perspectives. And he sort of brought all of that together, and he was doing it under the garb of teaching us finance. I mean, I got a D in that course, so that's not. I don't know if I was a good student or not. I got a D there, but he set us up on a path. When I say us, the entire class of MDI, he set us up on a path wherein suddenly every problem to me was was an opportunity to look at from different perspectives. So each problem I would look at from as a painter, as a technology, as a coder, as a marketer, and so on and so forth. So that's a guy that I had access to. I'm hoping to get him on this one of these days if all goes well. So that is the first guy that sort of made me realize this. The second guy I'll talk about is this guy called Raj. He runs this agency called Creative Asia. So it was my second job when I was pretty young, and he told me that so I joined him as a brand planner way back in 2007, I think. And when I started working with him, he said that don't think of yourself as a brand planner. You are the brain for the agency. So whatever the agency does, whatever work goes out, it has to have some bit of insight that you pour it. You have to learn from whatever sources you can. Give us the output and we'll apply that when we create things. So these are the first two people actually who put me in that path, on that path of learning interesting things from different disciplines. Otherwise, I would have been a coder, happily married by now with 5 kids and a 2 BHK and a Santro and 2 credits. So, I mean, and to make matters, I am not married. I don't have a house. I don't have a car. And
But you have 5 kids.
I don't have 5 kids either. So that nobody knows right now. So Veer, what are your 2, 3?
So I think I love the way that you put it, that there are these giants who you have met physically, and then there are other giants who you may not have met, but you kind of got access to them from books and so on and so forth. I think you spoke about the first half of those. I feel
there is both.
about the other also. In my case, I think this is something that I bring out again and again. So my co-founders at my current company, which is Mirror India, which we were called Social Wavelength earlier. I think that's like the prime example of the kind of giants whose shoulders one could potentially stand on. And so these two gentlemen, Sanjay Mehta and Harish Tibrewala, I met them 8+ years back when they were thinking of doing something in the area which I was also thinking, which is a digital marketing agency or digital solutions company. And that's when I met them, and somehow we kind of hit it off. And I ended up becoming a co-founder with them. And so now, just to give you a sense, so I was 22 at that time when we got started, and both Sanjay and Harish have been serial entrepreneurs. They were both like in their 40s, I guess, at that time. Apart from all, and they were in the internet space from '97 onwards. So at this point, they've been in the internet space in India for like 20 years, right? So they were, of course, they had a whole lot of experience that was there with them. They were extremely sharp, intelligent kind of people. They say you shouldn't always be the smartest person in the room because then it means that you're not learning anything. That happens with me every single time I'm with them. I'm pretty much the dumbest guy in the room, right? So they're extremely smart, a lot of experience. And the other thing also is that they're also wise in the sense that it's not always everything is not always about like a commercial discussion, or everything is not always cutthroat business. There's a wise in a very human sense. So in all of these aspects, I've gotten a tremendous opportunity to learn from them. I know this is an opportunity not a lot of people get. Hopefully, I can pay forward some of that through a platform like this. So those are a couple of people I want to talk about. I'll link to their. I always want to do this. I'll link to their profiles below.
If they have active profiles, bar from Twitter. I also worked at Venom at a point in time, so I think Sanjay and Harish have a very. Sanjay still has a little vibrant social media presence. Harish doesn't have.
We could link on Facebook.
You could do that. Okay, cool. So for me, so in case of Mihir, where he got to work with these amazing set of people. For me, one was my prof, the other was my boss. There's something wrong with it. Okay, sorry. That is power savings for a brand. So A is obviously Professor Bakshi, B is Raj. The next person that I'll probably talk about is again a boss from one of the places that I worked at. So this guy runs an events agency, and now events is, I don't know how many people know about events here, but events is unlike any other business that you can think of. So You need to be able to think super quick on your feet, because if the set is falling apart around you, you need to be able to somehow control the fire. So you need to be super quick on your feet. B, we were doing those events across the world pretty much. So there. I mean, imagine you are in Hong Kong where nobody speaks English or Hindi, and they only speak Mandarin or whatever flavor of Chinese they have, and we need to get some shit done at the last minute. How do you do that without knowing the language? So while Professor Bakshi and Raj taught me let me use Kitabi Gyan, they taught me how books work. Suvi, the guy who taught me the worldly wisdom, was actually the guy who put me in the deep end of the water, as they call it, and he made me learn all those things on the job, on the experience. In fact, if if I remove Suvi from my life, I'll probably not be as how do I put it? I'll probably not be able to sit in front of you, because I would not know that I need to, pay it for an important time, or I need to sort of meet more people who want to do some interesting things. So that is going to be such a huge part of what I've learned from. So in terms of people who had physical access to, apart from usual suspects like my parents and my family and my friends, so these are the three people that I sort of really want to talk about. And then the fourth guy that I want to talk about is a guy called Hemant, probably the most unassuming guy. He is the guy who made me aware that there is life beyond work and profits and other things. So he was the guy who sort of said that you need to be mindful, you need to be slow, you need to be better, you need to look out for the world as well. So if my life ambition is to impact 1 billion lives, Hemant has a huge role to play in nudging me towards creating an ambition. Prior to Hemant, the ambition would have been to become a billionaire or the richest guy in the world, which still is, the ambition still is there. But with Hemant, the ambition changed to becoming the richest guy in the world who had the most impact on the humanity, as I would put it. So this is where the other next two guys would be.
Right. So, one kind of common thread for me, you actually mentioned friends in there for a bit. One common thread for me, and which is why I want to not name one person, but actually this theme in my life, or this trend in my life is that goes back to this concept that you are the average of the 5 people who you surround yourself with. So I think my life has been an almost extreme example of that. So the kind of things that I've done, the kind of person I was, the kind of phases I've been through, if I reflect back on those, they've pretty much always been about, literally the average of the 5 people I was around. So if I was around, there's a time in my life where I was around like these completely, so to speak, wandering people, right? I mean, they have no goal in life, whatever, that kind of stuff.
Hippie.
Nothing wrong with that, yeah. And it became like that only. Not like I was some extreme hippie and smoking all day and long hair, all of that. But I was just completely wandering. And that would have led me down some other completely different path. And somehow I found myself then with, I got lucky, I guess, again, found myself with another group of people, and those group of people were more focused, they had more sorted themselves out, and this, I can literally see this happen again and again and again and again and again in my life. Right? So every time I've surrounded myself with people who are focused, people who are who have a clue about what they want to do in the world, who are hardworking, who are introspective, thoughtful, all of those kind of things that I value. My life starts becoming that. Right? So the other kind of the third person I want to talk about is literally all these people who, over the course of the years, have shaped my thinking and the way I behave in my life, really. And I think this concept of surround yourself with the 5 best people, just absolutely, in my case, it just comes to every single time. I need to. I still don't consciously edit as much as I should. Like this guy, this girl, I don't do that enough, but it just absolutely works.
So there are 2 things that brings me to. So A, who are the 5 people that you spend most of your time with right now?
So
you
right
could be
now,
apolitical as well. So we'll edit.
So right now, the top 5 people would be 5 people in Apart from my wife and my daughter, so I have a baby daughter. Apart from the two of them, it would be people in office essentially. But five groups of people I spend a lot of time with. I spend a lot of time with my family, people in office. I spend a lot of time with some select friends, and most recently, there's a time when when me and Saurabh used to very actively think about doing something like this before. And since then, I've been completely cut out on any such pursuits. But a few months back, I got back in. I'm on the board of a company now, which is a company that runs or that makes home automation devices. So I spend a lot of time, not I mean like 1 or 2 hours a week with the founder there. So those are the kind of places where I'm spending a lot of time, and those are the kind of places which are averaging to become me.
So every time somebody's phone makes me buy the pizza for them.
Yeah. So this is.
So
Hello, Radhika. You're on the camera. We're recording.
So that's Mihir's wife. While he's sorting his domestic issues, I will talk about so that thing about average of 5 people. So I think a couple of days back, I read a series of tweets from Bill Gates where he sort of was giving advice to a 22-year-old who's just passing out of college. I don't know if you got that read that set of tweets. Wherein one of the things that he says is that he reinforces the thought about surrounding yourself with smart people, so that you actually get some tacit sort of understanding, knowledge from those guys.
Right.
So you'll be happy to know that you're in the same company as Bill Gates. So their life goes one
Nice.
has achieved for you, right? Okay.
You
So
just use a hashtag in conversation.
yeah, so that's the point of having being addicted to Twitter for about 11 years.
Oh, I deleted Twitter from my phone.
Oh,
I
why?
got too much into this political thing, man, and it's such a time suck. It's hilarious because everybody is basically chutya. Can we say that? Chutya.
I'm sure.
The
Not
opposite,
safe for work. Hashtag NSFW. Sorry.
the opposite political party, and it's hilarious.
So
But
what-
it's like a time suck, man, and I just deleted Twitter.
So what I do is how I use Twitter, and maybe that helps you. So every 3 months or 4 months, I just go and delete everybody that I follow. Like everybody. I follow 0 people. And then I start to build my list again from some set of people that I know will add value to me. So Chris Saka, for example, is one example that I'll follow every time I follow. So I start from there, and because I unfollow all these people in masse, some people that I interact with, they start to like back to me saying that how dare you unfollow me? Think for people, right? So then I start building my list again, and I do that till the time it reaches a spanning level as what we
So
mentioned.
the point is, I didn't even consider it spam. That's what was so horrible.
Okay, yeah,
I
that's
kind of drowned into the whole thing, and these guys are whatever, and someone else is whatever else. I mean, this polarization thing is too much. For me.
The other thing I did for myself is recently the IPL is a lot.
Calcutta.
Okay.
We have some campaigns, right? That's the only reason.
Right. So IPL is like obviously cricket, right? So what I've done is I've muted IPL from my all these accounts, right? So there not just IPL, I've muted Bharatiya Janata Party, I've muted Congress, and I've muted everybody except Kamal Khan. Except Kamal Khan. So I'm a religious follower of Kamal Khan. If you're listening, please, I want your autograph. Thank you so much, sir.
Nobody follows up on these things.
I know.
Like
So I'll hashtag you. I'll put your name under the comments. Please give me your autograph. Thank you so much.
You do this well.
Show notes, guys. And coming back. So how I use social media is that on Twitter specifically, where I spend a lot of time because I believe, like I said, shoulder of giants. So for me, Twitter itself is a huge giant. The kind of friends that I've made on Twitter, it has been phenomenal. So if I didn't have access to Twitter, I'd probably not have as many friends that I have right now who teach me a lot of things. So for me, Twitter is like an important tool. I cannot not have it on my phone, but I use it.
Right.
But maybe that helps you.
Maybe I need to try it. I mean, I clearly can't be off it for too long, but I just need to be more disciplined. I think I need to be around 5 people who use Twitter well, so that it happens.
That's one. And my handle is @Saurabh. You could please follow me. I need more followers. I want to become a social media influencer so that I can charge money for each tweet that I send. So that's another hashtag life goal, as you call it. So anyhow, so like we said that he spoke about the group of people that he thinks are giants that he sort of built his life around. So for me, apart from these 3-4 individuals, the ones that I mentioned, the other set of people would be obviously Twitter. The other good thing that happened to me was since I went to a business school that is sort of amongst the best. If it's debatable if it's the best school or amongst the best school. So
Very good.
it's a great school. So what has happened to me was that people who passed out of the school before me, we have a super active and super vibrant community of alumni, and those setups. So there are about 2,000 people in that group, and by nature I'm a little spammy, right? I'm the ones who send all those good morning messages on WhatsApp. If you are,
Really?
I don't actually. I don't. I'm trying to be funny. So I'm a little spammy on these email conversations. So because of that one spam rate, I got to make a lot of friends with a lot of interesting people, and that is the second group that sort of taught me. So if you are a 22-year-old and you're looking for advice in India, irrespective of whatever the world says, you have to go to a great school or a college to be able to have access to the liberal network. Look at Ahmedabad, for example, or ISB, for example. You may not get to learn a lot of things in class, but IIM Ahmedabad will give you access to people who have passed out from college for the last 50 years, and most of them would be CEOs and so on and so forth. So that's the other
Sorry about
thing.
this.
So yeah, so let's just finish that conversation or hit with that. So irrespective of whoever says whatever, you have to go to a great B school or a engineering college because that just adds up to the kind of people that you can get access to. So that's going to be the second thing that I sort of will say that is the shoulders of these are the second giants that I sort of talk about.
Books you read recently?
Okay, recently. So okay, so it's a tough one. I'll tell you why. Because till about 3 months back, I was reading like a madman. I would read and do nothing else. But about 3 months back, I charged upon a conversation between Naval Ravikant and Shane Parish. Shane Parish writes a blog called farmandstreet.com. So in the conversation, Shane and Naval are talking about how Naval acquires knowledge and information. So he says a great thing. He says most of the business books that you read, they talk of one central idea. And then they spend 3 pages building on an idea. Case in point, tipping point, blink, flat world, blue ocean, red. Like you think of these business books, right? So they have one idea to sort of give you. So what Naval says is that he would flip through the pages. He would go and read a long blog post about the book. And instead of reading 300 pages, he can consume that idea in those 10 minutes of a reading that article. So while it is not really the best way to learn, that's what I have started doing that in the last 3 months. I do not know if it's working for me as yet, but I do know that I am reading through a huge width and breadth of subjects which I was not being able to do earlier. So that is a change that has happened to me. I read. So books is more or less out. The only books that I read now is I'm going to start reading now is history books because a friend of mine, one of the 5 people that I spend time with, he is a huge advocate of reading history books because that teaches you a lot of things about how people lived in the time of adversity, how they took decisions, how did they found answers to questions that were tough for them without technology. So I'll probably go back and read history books, but I don't think I'm reading. I don't think I'm going to read a book unless it's super recommended. The other thing I do is I use Shoulders of Giants. So right, Bill Gates after he's retired from Microsoft, he writes this insane blog called Gates Notes. You have to subscribe to that show notes, and he often talks about a lot of books. So in fact, the last 5 books that I've read, all of them at some point in time have been featured on his blog. So I can talk about them, right? So Sapiens is one of the books that I've actually read because Bill Gates talked about it. And not just Bill Gates, every guy who has got a thinking brain talks about Sapiens as the book that will change your life. So that's one. Then I'm reading David Foster Wallace on tennis. So that's something again Bill Gates recommends. I just read and I was blown by this book called Shoe Dog by the Nike guy Phil Knight. So that's something that I totally enjoyed and I recommend it to everybody. So these are the 3 that I can immediately think of top of the head, and all 3 have been recommended by Bill Gates. And I have no clue how I picked those books up, but I reckon Bill Gates has a huge role to play in the selection of books as well. But I don't think I'm going to read any more books. I can totally acquire the knowledge.
What about other media? What about
So I
podcasts?
consume a lot of okay. So I don't have a TV at home, so I do not watch TV at all. I was very excited about Saurabh versus Saurabh then. they announced that we're going to come again. But it's on Hotstar and I don't have Hotstar subscription, so it's not enticing me enough to go and buy that subscription either. So Netflix I bought because I had to watch this one, Breaking Bad, and a couple of more shows. So I bought Netflix, but I didn't get Hotstar because of that. So no TV for me, to be honest, no TV. On YouTube, I consume regular suspects like podcasts by people like Chris Saka. Not Chris Saka, Jason is one example. Tim Ferriss is one example. I read everything that Chris Saka says wherever he says. I follow Elon Musk like a madman. Whatever he says, wherever he says, I just go and read about it. Jeff Bezos is a huge inspiration, so I read everything that he says. Charlie Rose is a guy that I sort of consume a lot. So that's one. The other thing I read a lot. In fact, what I do is I sort of watch one TED talk almost every week. And when I say watch the TED talk, not just 20 minutes of reading or seeing what the talk is about, but actually reading about that talk in detail. If the guy is saying that schools kill creativity, right? So I would actually go and figure out that why do people say that schools kill creativity. So I would go and watch opinions and comments about that content. So that's something that I consume. Then I've lately started to subscribe to a lot of podcasts, and funny thing is that these podcasts I'm trying right now. Right? So I have a podcast that is about serial killers in America. I have a podcast about alternative lives of people in Iceland. So I'm reading weird things, and I don't really have a pattern there. But yeah, if I were to list, I would say it is a lot of YouTube, it is a lot of TED talks, and a lot of things that other people recommend. Like this set of people that are following Twitter, if they recommend that you watch this particular thing, I will go and watch. So that's how the consumption has changed in the last few days per se. So that's what it is. What about you?
So currently I am reading Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, and it's a tough book to get through. So I have been in this phase of I'm currently reading for a while. Really my habit of reading like textbooks and all of that is, and this is very much like a textbook. It's about so he talks about when you talk about mind, it's about two systems of thinking. One is a system 1 and a system 2, and system 1 is the instinctive type of thinking, right? Like when you see a color, you recognize the color. That system 2 is the thinking that gets engaged when system 1 realizes it's not capable of, like if I give you a multiplication puzzle, 64 multiplied by 42, you immediately realize that it's not an instinctive response, so system 2 gets engaged then. And so that's like he introduces these two like characters, and then just ways and ways and ways of showing how you are not as rational as you seem on the basis of these things. And I'm confused actually because it's a very riveting book. Like you're reading it and it's riveting, and you spend like half an hour on it and you're through like 15 pages only. It's like that, riveting, but it's dense with material. So it's not something you can go through fast. So I have like 100 pages left, and but yeah, that's one book which I absolutely love. Completely on the other side of the spectrum, I'm reading this great book. I finished reading it, but I read it like every day, called Good Night Moon, which is the nursery rhyme to put babies to sleep. It's around like 5-10 cardboard pages thick.
Doesn't put you to sleep as well.
It doesn't put my baby also to sleep.
But maybe there's a feedback to the
yeah, but Good Night Moon is a baby book. So yeah, that was a joke. But and then there are a couple of books which are developmental books about for babies, like how to make the baby emotionally secure. So yeah, those are the books that I've been reading. One thing that I've been very much into recently is this guy called Jordan Peterson. He is a professor and a psychologist, and he really talks about various things, but specifically he talks about truth, why it's important to always tell the truth. He talks about the importance of stories, and he talks about it from a why you should why it may be good for people to have religious belief from that perspective. I'm an atheist, so it's a very contrary point of view to what I actually believe. But he talks about the power of stories. He talks about how talks about Jung, and I have not read Jung, nor do I ever think I'll get through.
Jung is that Jung.
Jung.
Carl Jung.
Same.
Sorry, I call him Carl Jung.
Carl Jung.
Whatever.
Jung is a 1980s Hindi movie.
J-U-N-G.
Yeah.
That's how an Indian Haryani from Delhi will pronounce.
So he talks about Jung, and he talks about Jungian archetypes and how the hero as a character is an archetype, and how it's very important. Why do we get fascinated by stories of the hero, the archetypal hero? And the heroes he talks about, the biggest hero he talks about is Jesus, because he's a religious, he's a Christian. But the stories that he talks about are anybody who the way he explains it is that anybody who can scale a dominance hierarchy is a hero. And I don't get many of these concepts at the depth at which at the amount of depth there is. But dominance hierarchy is basically, if you are working in an organization and you are not, you are a mid-level guy, then in that dominance hierarchy, the top guy is like the CEO or the investor or whatever it is, and the bottom guy is like the person who's actually doing work, whatever operations, executive, right? You're a mid management guy. If you can scale that dominance hierarchy, you are a hero in that story. And if you could do it in another story also. So in competitive tennis, if you scale that dominance hierarchy, in a sport like an individual sport like tennis, there's a clear dominance hierarchy, right? Men's top 10 men's tennis players or top 5,000 men's tennis players. That's a dominance hierarchy. If you can scale that dominance hierarchy, you're a hero. And he speaks on so many different things, and he's also mired in this free speech, anti-free speech kind of thing. It's very, very interesting. Some of the things he says don't always square with me well, but I'm a big believer that you should let contrary points of views reach you, because in today's world, a lot of times they don't, because you're in an echo chamber, but because it helps you solidify your own beliefs. If you don't have something pushing back against your own belief, so what is the meaning of that belief?
Sorry, I'm just going to take this thread to a different level, right? So the day before, somebody spoke to me and said that so this guy said the good part of Facebook is that it shows me the kind of content that I like. The good part of YouTube is that it shows me the kind of videos I like. So what Mihir was saying is that we put ourselves in echo chamber, and social media today makes me go deeper into like I go even deeper into that echo chamber, because I keep seeing things that I'm most probable to like those videos again and again, right? So like if I watch a lot of poker videos right now, so if you open my YouTube page, it just has poker videos and nothing else, because I cannot see anything else if I don't go and search for it. So that's the flip side of social media. Right?
Correct. Right? So how I got introduced to this guy. Actually, 2-3 things happened simultaneously. But the key thing that really got me to look at him is on Sam Harris. He has a podcast called Waking Up. On that Waking Up podcast, he called Jordan Peterson as a guest. And Sam Harris is an atheist. He's like almost people accuse him of being a militant atheist. And this guy is he's also a militant scholar. No, he's not militant. He's a theist, but he's one of the theists who has a good argument, which is really rare. But he has a really good argument. And Sam Harris got the maximum number of requests ever to have him on the show as a guest. So this guy went on the guest, and the first podcast they did, it just bombed completely because they could not come to an agreement on the meaning of truth. What? Now, so it's like a common man listening to it is like, my God, these guys are intellectual giants to the extent that they can't agree on what truth means.
Sorry, but we could agree on the name of the podcast, so we are not very far away from these guys.
Yeah, exactly.
So we are almost there.
Exactly. So that's how I got into it, and then I got deeper, and it just goes to show, and I'm sure most people believe it, but in case you don't, like the contrary point of view can actually have so many valuable things which may not necessarily be directly contrary. Okay, let me put it another way. You have one point of view, there's another person who's completely contradicting you on that one point of view. Doesn't mean he has like 500, he doesn't have 500 other things that can add value to you. So this guy talking about the
So you cherry pick things that you think a guy could sort of teach you, is it? So you may not agree with that.
Correct. I may not agree with everything this guy says, but some of the things he talks about truth and about this concept of dominance hierarchy and hero being someone who can scale it, it just makes you look at things in a different way. another thing he says, that there's a lot of universal things across the world in different cultures of the world.
Yeah.
And the reason those universal things are there is because they are almost evolutionarily selected for. So it's like, having a certain upright posture in apes like us was evolutionarily selected for because it in some way resulted in a larger brain, so we became more adaptive, etc. etc. Similarly, us being attracted to a particular type of story. There was an evil king and how he got defeated by some commoners or whatever it is. Or there was a wise king and how he ruled till some outside calamity came and how he protected his kingdom. These are stories which have some, they're evolutionarily almost chosen.
So, in
to
fact,
make us
just to add on to what Mihir is saying, there is this guy called Joseph Campbell, if I'm getting the name right. So he created this. So I am a book writer as well. So while I was writing a book, I was doing research on how to tell the best stories.
Right.
So this guy says that there is something called the monomyth structure.
Right.
So every hero
Absolutely.
follows a journey
Hero's
through the monomyth, right? And what he says and what Mihir also said is that look at any culture, history, religion. Every culture would have the same structure. You can break down a Rocky, a Rambo, Jesus' story, a Rama from Hinduism. You pick a religion and you pick the story, and each story
Bahubali,
Bahubali for that matter. I've not seen the movie, so I don't know. But I haven't seen the movie. Sorry, Rajni uncle or whoever the producer is. I don't know who the producer is. Sorry.
Oh God!
I know Karan Johar is somewhere.
He's a distributor.
Whatever it is. So, anyways, so each story has the same sort of journey for the hero, which we will say. So lesson for me when I was writing my book and in general advice when I talk to people is that if I can use that structure when I sort of create content, write something and meet people and talk about it, so that immensely adds value to what I do. So maybe that is something that you could read and I don't know if that guy talks about the same things or not.
So no, I have read about the monomyth elsewhere where somebody tried to show how Lord of the Rings and Star Wars and
all of these are exactly
also
that's
follow
Joseph
that.
Campbell. So it's read by a lot of authors, right? So that's right. So the entire idea is multidisciplinary thinking,
Exactly.
right? So here's a guy who actually teaches philosophy, and here's a guy who teaches science, and here's a guy who teaches religion. Now imagine getting to learn from those 5-6 people and then applying that into a world of startups, right? How do I create a startup wherein incentives for people to sign up are aligned as if I want to make that guy feel like a hero, and if I do that, then the guy is with me for the rest of his life.
Or Daniel Kahneman talking about system 1 and how to get how impulsive decisions happen.
Right.
I mean, the application of that and that textbook, not just that textbook, the application is like everywhere. I mean, how to fool yourself into doing something. It's so amazing. People asking me for fitness advice.
No, I'm asking you for advice by Kahneman.
Maybe, but so that you can. I mean, so to some extent, I've tried to do it for myself because I really need to figure out something about my fitness. But so one of the things it says is that I don't know in what context and all that, but if you feel you don't have that choice, then you're not tempted for it also. So if you just remove the junk food from your house, for example, you don't have junk food. You never have junk food. So because you don't, that choice almost becomes outside the realm of possibilities. I don't know if he quite explains it in this way, but it's definitely.
So there are things that you know, there are things that you don't know, there are things that you don't know. So you put junk food in the third.
Or so.
Second category.
I think it's also like the mind likes to make easy decisions. So if the decision is if I have to have junk food, then I have to order it from somewhere or go down and pick it up.
We just had
the shop.
pizza.
We just had a pizza. But because it was so convenient, right?
Exactly.
Because
the debate was that it will not create any mess and you can order it in reasonable amount of time. So businesses are built on these kind of couple of these insights, right? So if you create a business that is sort of makes life convenient for people, then obviously Captain Obvious 101. So we'll scratch that as well. Anyway.
Okay, so with that, I think we are at like the 40-minute mark. We have no clue how this went and what we will see. But yeah, so that's us. I think that's the podcast we are looking at. We are literally at we are 2 runs below ground zero at this point in terms of setup, in terms of having thought through what this episode
I'm where to look at the
and where to look at.
I'm actually looking at Mihir on the camera, as if I'm watching him.
Exactly, and where to look at. I mean, I am quite an attractive guy.
No, but I'm going to wait for Radhika to come back and then show her this piece and take her opinion.
Right. So yeah, so that was the episode 1 of the multi.
No, hang on. I'm sorry, I'm going to write episode 0.01.
Okay, episode 0.01 of the multidisciplinary podcast.
MVP.
MVP. We should check if that doesn't become a full form of something else. like during the MCD the election, the MCD also stands for So we should check that out.
We'll do that. Or maybe you can send us suggestions. That will be something cool.
Right,
So if
this
you
is in no way copy from Saurabh.
so
No connection.
So you could send us suggestions of what this could be. You could also talk to us about what we could talk about in terms of interests. Between the two of us, we pretty much have interests that are so wide that we don't even know where to start. Actually, make any sense
Except cricket.
except at Bahubali. You
I
were
love
not.
Bahubali.
I don't
Like,
see. So yeah, I don't see cricket. I don't see movies. I don't see TV. So Saurabh versus Saurabh, good standing. So you could send us suggestions on what do we call this. You could talk to us about what else could we talk about that sort of helps you, and what else. And you please follow me on Twitter. I'm dying to become a social media celebrity. I would love to have like 1 million followers on Twitter. What is the beat going around right now? How many retweets for live supply of some shit?
Yeah, of Wendy's.
Oh, Wendy's. The channel Wendy's.
Last I checked was like some 3 million retweets.
So everybody like doing Red Bulls and Cokes and stuff.
Right.
So anyhow, so yeah, this is it. Enough of social media spiel. But any last wise words to people before we disconnect?
Before
Disconnect.
No, nothing. So tell us what you feel, and irrespective of that feedback, we're going to continue. So even if you say you guys suck, don't ever do this again, we will keep this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.